That's the new term today. Okay. All right. Well, we were moving on to corporate social responsibility. So when we're thinking about CSR and the importance of it in new age leadership compared to old age leadership, where the focus might have been primarily on profitability, okay, and shareholder value, whereas today it may be towards something else. So what do you think that something else is in new age leadership? And what are your opinions about it from old age leadership, where it was about profits and shareholder value?
So personally, I think that it's definitely taking the front seat. It's becoming a very prevalent question in a lot of interviews. Folks are folks are really taking folks are really prioritizing that in their in their job search, because they want to make sure that they work for an organization that is doing good work, right? Organizations are going to be profitable, right? If they're not profitable, then they won't be around for much longer. But I think that a lot of people understand that the profits are going to come, and a real way to see the profit is to do good work for the world, right? That's a way to be profitable in society. It helps people, want to come to work if they know that they're doing good work for good reasons. That's, if anything else, that's what helps to build a career, right? Where you're able to wake up and say, I love the work that I do. I love the people that I do it with, and I know that I'm, doing something right for the world. So I personally, I value that very heavily, because, like I said, I mean, the profits are going to come, right? You're going to be profitable as long as you. It's a way to be profitable and do good work for the world, right? So I think that there's a lot of value put on those things from, in the new age.
And I think there's a continuing battle going on, especially in the pages of the Wall Street Journal about profitability and CSR. Even recently, they were I forgot which fund they were going after, but they were hitting them on their returns because they've been a big, strong proponent of sustainability and social responsibility. So I think climate change is now something that is taken seriously. I think, CSR has definitely won the moral high ground. But I think of capitalism as a brutally efficient mechanism, and so it will, I mean, Khalid, you make a good point. Companies are going to make profits, but the ones that don't are going to get stamped out. And if it's because of well, whatever the reason, that doesn't really matter. So I think what we're finding is that we're able to measure more what some of these impacts are, and then monetize them. And the more that happens, the more CSR is going to get into the financial reporting. I mean, I know the SEC is trying to add it right now and trying to get it into the reporting, and governments are certainly imperfect mechanisms for trying to make changes like this. Regulation is a hard way to do it, but it's getting something in there, and then over time, I'm hoping that we'll get better at measuring it, because the societal costs are huge. But Khalid, and you and your generation, I think a lot of what got this started was there's a war for talent, and this talent, it's important to them, and they want to know that the companies that they go to work for are acting on this. And so it became part of in my mind, part of this capitalism model, because now it's real.
It's a bargaining chip.
It's a bargaining chip.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And the organizations who are doing it well, who are able to potentially forego profit to do the right thing, they're going to win the war on talent.
Mhm.
I wholeheartedly believe that, because in in our I think in our day and age, because I don't even know the percentages and I don't want to throw it out there, but I'm going to say majority of us are riddled in debt. So we aren't necessarily, we're looking to get the financial compensation from our organization, true, but we will we will potentially forego a better paying opportunity for a quality of life, right? Quality of life meaning, how much do I enjoy my job? How much what's my work life balance look like? And is my organization doing things that are going to make this world a better place? Right. I think that's a like I said, it's a very important thing to a lot of people within my generation.
So when you said forego profit, my Wall Street Journal burst into flames, and I felt a little bit of a twinge, and I think so. Maybe I'm parsing words. I'm thinking, maximize profit and maximize that within the framework.
Right.
Um,
It's probably the better way to put it. Yeah, I know that profit is the end all be all. But
yeah,
I think the margins may not be as high for some of these CSR activities or community building activities, but that's in the short term. In the long term, I have the mindset that if we invest in our communities, then like rising tide lifts all ships, right? So if we invest in marginalized communities, then it is going to be better for the world in general. Um, so yeah, I think that in the short term, margins may not be as profitable, but it'll be beneficial in the long run.
Mhm.
yeah. Let me just say then that the old school, to oversimplify it, would say, well, then we won't have jobs, and the new school leadership is saying, my kids won't have a future, and so yeah, I think there is a difference between the old school and the new school on this.
Amply put. Yeah. Yeah,
It's
you won't have a job, but there won't be a world for us to live in.
right. You won't have a job, but we'll have a planet, right?
That's right.
A planet to live on. Yes, we're a capitalist society at the end of the day. That's just the way, the kind of country we are. But I totally can see both sides of the coin. I remember when social responsibility has how it's grown. I'll say it from that, because I remember years ago, yes, we would do something little, it was maybe a one person, two-person team that even had the responsibility, had the community responsibility as their job. The departments were all very, very small. And then the initiatives that were coming out were minute and small, and maybe, didn't make a lot of impact, but it gave them exposure to say, hey, just lift their hand up. So I can see where it's grown over the years, and it is becoming, but will always be a capitalist society, but it has grown and it is expanding, and people are paying more attention to this, corporate responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say that I have
Agree.
seen. Yeah. All right. Okay, let's talk a little about mentoring. And you had mentioned something about coaching. You're seeing in the new age more coaching. So the shift from directive leadership styles to more of the coaching, mentoring approach in the new age leadership, and personal and professional development of employees. So let's kind of circle back and talk a little more about that. What are your thoughts?
I think that good mentors, good coaches, they're a dime a dozen, right? And in order to be an effective mentor and or coach, you need to understand the needs of the person who you're mentoring, right? It's not one size fits all. And I think that in the legacy way of thinking, it was more of a here's how I did it. Here's the blueprint of what I did. If I did it, anybody could do it, right? That's one way of doing it, and for a lot of folks, it has been effective. I'm more of the mindset of what are your needs, right? Where do you feel like you are falling short, or where are you stuck? Where are you at now? What can I help you do better? What can I help? Where do you need guidance going forward? I think that is a much more effective way to do it, because in that way of thinking, you don't have to, go down my path to find success. You're building your own path. Because you can give me the blueprint, but I already have like 30 something years of experience. I can't, deviate from my past in order to shift to your blueprint and do it your way, right? I want to utilize my 30 something years of experience that I have, my community upbringing, my thoughts, all of those things in order to build my own path. And I may get stuck. So where can you help get me unstuck? That's what I'm looking for within a mentor, and that's the type of mentor that I'm trying to be. So what is your path? Where do you see yourself going, and how can we help you get there?
Okay.
Versus, here's how I do.
Okay. You know what? First thing I thought about was, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And that used to be the thought behind my 30 years of experience. And in old age leadership, that kind of was like, that was the mantra, it ain't broke, we don't have to fix it. So that came all into forget about the diversity of thought, forget about being creative. This is how we do it. I remember one time in my career when my boss, who was very progressive, she was a VP of HR, very progressive woman. And we used to do things pencil and paper. And this is when Lotus first came out. And I had to do I guess, biweekly payroll. And so I was just starting out my career and everything was pencil and paper. And she made me, I learned Lotus. And her husband built a spreadsheet in Lotus. And you know how long ago that was. Built this spreadsheet in Lotus. And I was just tickled pink. It was great. It was wonderful. I didn't have to worry about my numbers adding up. And it just took that love of learning just kind of took off for me. That was like my springboard to that way of learning. But nowadays, when I look at leadership, like I'm really big about how far do you want to go? How far do you want to grow? All right, when it comes to leadership. But I bounce off now, folks in your age group, your generation. I'm like, I know this because I've been around a long time, but I want to learn from you because that's stuff I don't know. And so I'm going to lean on you as the leader to kind of say, okay, this is how, this is the experience I can give you as the mentor to give you that experience and wisdom from that. But also on the other side, for me, I'm looking at you to help me be a better leader from the things that I can learn from you, mostly from a technology standpoint, I'll say, because I'm okay, but I'm not I can be technically challenged at times. So I'm going to lean more on I want that empowerment from you to help us move to that new age of, like we talked earlier about digital technology, all of that. And then I can be on the other sides of the mentor from the standpoint of, well, this is what I've lived. So I can share that with you. That's how
I think the if it ain't broke, don't fix it mentality. It has worked for a long time, but I will say that we're in a break fix society right now, right? So we we
And it's
tear
broken.
everything. We tear everything down and try to build it up to be more effective, right? So that mentality is antiquated. We can't think that way anymore. I mean, things are moving at a much faster click now than they really ever have moved. So um, assume that everything is broken, and how do you fix it? That's my mentality.
So,
John?
yeah, I mean, this is such a big topic for me. The mentorship. So I'll kind of oversimplify it a bit. So the mentorship to me has been around for a long time, but as it gets more formality, it's addressing this notion of getting outside one's network and the need to be able to have support and guidance to, to navigate within a company or within an industry. And so that's been emerging for some time. And it's become an important part, I think, of career development. I know people that have asked executives at other companies to be their mentors
Mhm.
uh, in order to help further their career and their visibility and their learning and all of that. The coaching I see as being an outgrowth of the dissatisfaction with feedback systems and performance feedback specifically. And that's an area that I've never seen it done really well. If there's a conversation that takes place, if there's learning that takes place, great. That's really the outcome that we're looking for. But most feedback systems turn into rating systems, and then there is no development that comes out of them. And so there's a idea of a coaching mindset and a growth mindset, so people can be open to change, can hear messages, can act on what they want to do differently, how they want to develop. And so the companies right now, you're seeing them train up a bunch of coaches internally to try and help instill this mindset. You're seeing a lot of teaching around how to give feedback that's following behind the person, as Khalid described, kind of asking questions and what is it that you want and what's working for you and not working for you, and how can I support you in your development. And I think that's in large part to try and address this need and desire to develop, and the fact that our feedback systems, which could do that, are not really set up to do a good job of that, unfortunately.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. And another thing about that, John, it depends on the industry, because some industries are very time driven, like manufacturing and production. And so it's like, how do we get the time for maybe that 5 minute coaching conversation? Because we got to get the product out the door. We got to get whatever it is we're manufacturing done on a certain length in a certain amount of time. And so I've had clients, and that's a struggle for them, is we'd love to do it. We see the value of it, but how do we put in a process to make that happen? So it's a little easier, I think, when you're in I guess, an office setting as opposed to a production setting.
I can see that being true, but that is for formal coaching. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
informal coaching, that happens at any given point, right? But you have to be, willing to accept the coaching and don't, or you have to be willing to accept the coaching and not see the feedback as, demeaning or that you've done something wrong. It's just that something can be done a little bit better,
Right.
right? Um, so yeah, carving out the time for formal feedback, I completely agree with you. It's tough to do, especially when everybody has their own jobs to do. But informal coaching, informal feedback, those gems,
Mm-hmm.
we need to be sharing those more.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I agree with that. When thinking about, you mentioned the performance review,
Mhm.
and a lot of managers struggle with that. I had to do a lot of coaching with managers on how to do performance review, because it's a judgment call. Now I'm judging you on something, and that's always been hard for managers to get past that. well, it's not this once a year or twice a year sit down meeting. This should be happening every day, every week. You know what I'm saying? One-on-ones, or it could be, in a moment. Those what we call coaching moments.
Right.
Okay, coaching moments. And so I think that's a big part of getting leaders to understand that coaching, it can be formal, like you said, or informal, and when and how do I use it?
Right.
I think that's where we got to dig a little deeper and find solutions from that
Yeah.
perspective. Yeah.
Performance reviews should be, in an ideal world, performance reviews would be just a formality, right?
Yeah.
It's not, there are no surprises in a performance, right? You should be having these conversations year round, and it's just you have a formalized conversation so that you have something documented. But if you're doing it correctly, these conversations are happening continuously throughout the year.
Mm-hmm. John, you have any other thoughts about mentoring and coaching you want to add?
Tons, but I think
Go ahead, please. I want to hear. This is good stuff.
until I got trained as a coach, I thought that I knew how to coach.
Yeah.
And what I knew how to do was give
Me too.
advice, and I
Yep.
didn't realize the important difference or distinction between those. So um, I feel like on behalf of the Hudson Institute, I have to say that coaching and giving feedback are very different
Yes, they are.
kind of mechanisms. But aside from that important definition, um, I think that coaching is developmental.
Mhm.
And I remember in the 90s I was teaching um, mentoring, which was about the ability to listen and get upward feedback
Mhm.
to consulting partners, and I did it in Tokyo. And so I remember doing uh what's it called when we would practice together. And so
Mock,
huh?
mock,
Yeah, like
practice,
Role play.
role
role
play.
playing.
Yeah.
Thanks, Khalid. Yeah, we were doing role playing, and the partners would face each other, and so I have these Japanese partners, which when talk about being countercultural, that they're gonna give each other upward feedback, that, that their employees are gonna give them feedback. It was very interesting, and I give them all the credit in the world. They did it. They tried it. They threw themselves into it. Um, so this is again, it's these things have been moving gradually. I really like what Kayla said about the COVID being an accelerator. I mean, I would have learned Teams eventually, and I learned it overnight because I had to.
You had
Yeah.
to.
And I had a client who their customer service center, they were building out 3 new floors in a high rise across from where they were. They're building out a new building.
Mhm.
And they thought strategically, maybe now 5 years down the road, maybe some of these people could work from home, but it would take a long time and all of that. In in a period of 2 weeks, they moved thousands of customer service folks
Mhm.
to be able to work at home. And then they realized they had 3 floors of unused space a couple of years later after COVID. They're going to have to figure out what to do with that they didn't need anymore.
Mhm.
So the acceleration has just been significant. And I think every area that we've talked about has sort of taken off as part of COVID, as part of this shift in the way we think about work and what we're willing to do for work, and how much of our identities even are wrapped up in work, and
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
well as the mentorship and coaching topic.
Yep. I had the exact same thing happen to me. I was working on a project, doing instructional design, all ready to deploy, instructor led, and then boom, it dropped. And I mean, it was a scramble. We didn't even know what should we pick. You know what I mean? Because now we
Right.
go virtual, and it's like we didn't even know what we had to pick, much less learn had to learn what software we picked. So it definitely, it was chaotic. We got through it, but very chaotic, but I can definitely relate to that.
We covered a lot of ground in this episode, but stay tuned to the final part where we dig even deeper into new age versus old age leadership.